There we go. We're recording now. Okay. Well, thanks for joining me. I appreciate you doing that. This is a court about hiring 15-year-olds in the state of Oklahoma. I'm having to do two different sessions because the State Department of Labor's differ between Missouri and Oklahoma. So I hope that you're as interested in this initiative as I am, as far as seeing if it will be a success for us. As I mentioned in my email, studies show that 15-year-olds are very enthusiastic about working. They want to own their own money and be their own person. The nice thing for you is that it can help fill gaps in your schedule. There is some availability for weekdays, but definitely more availability on the weekends, school breaks, and summer. And you'll see that here in a second. Also gives you an opportunity to mold these individuals, to kind of put your stamp on them and teach them important life skills when it comes to the workplace that hopefully they'll take, with them throughout their career. And of course, if you treat them well and then they're enjoying what they're doing, just like any employee, we'd like for them to stay through age 16 and even more. So that's kind of the goal, is to get them in early and help them stay. Of course, we have to consider the child labor laws when it comes to this initiative that we're embarking on. They're much stricter, of course, for 15-year-olds than they are 16 and 17-year-olds. Like all child labor laws, they're regulated by both the Federal Department of Labor and the Oklahoma State Department of Labor. When it comes to employing 14 and 15-year-olds, workplace audits can occur. It's very common, I've been told by my contact at the Oklahoma Department of Labor, that auditors will come on site. They'll examine every time punch and they'll contact or interview the employees who are 15 just to make sure that they're staying within their required duties. And we'll go over that in a minute. They'll also ask to see their employment certificate, another aspect of hiring a 15-year-old. So these are like random audits. They would just kind of randomly pick a cafe and go through this exercise. A full-scale audit would occur for the entire company. So if it's an issue with an employee in in Tulsa, Oklahoma, that's TBI. So it would trigger an audit for all of TBI. And if it was in Oklahoma City, it would trigger a full-scale audit for OKC. And all it takes is one employee complaint. So again, we got to make sure that we're staying within the regulations, and that's not going to happen. Your responsibility, of course, just like mine, is to always follow all the regulations of the Department of Labor. Enough about that. So let's talk about work availability, the school year and the summer. So that's how the Department of Labor defines the two segments, I guess, of the year. So the school year is considered to be the day after Labor Day to May 31st. And here's the availability for them. They can work up to 18 hours for the week. And on school days, Monday through Friday, they can work until 6:55 p.m. up to 3 hours a day. And the beginning time would be after school. The tricky thing is, after school is determined by the local public high school schedule. So if the local high school that's the closest to your cafe gets out at 3:15, well, after school is 3:15 for those students, student employees, if you will. Also, you might see 6:55 p.m. and think, that's a weird time. The law is actually 7 p.m., but our policy is 6:55 p.m. just due to the audit purposes. We certainly can't have anyone clocking out at 7:01 p.m. So the goal is for them to be clocking out at 6:55. On weekends, things change. You've got 12 hours there on Saturdays and Sundays that you can schedule them to work up to 8 hours during that time. The thing about the Oklahoma law is that if they are scheduled to work more than 5 hours in a shift, at the 5th hour, they have to take a 31-minute break, and that's a clock out break. And so that would be something that you would monitor, but you would also put it on the employee to monitor as well, as far as when that 5-hour mark hits. When it comes to school breaks, whether that be fall, Christmas, spring, or I don't know what you guys call them, but we call them professional development days, when the teacher has a single day and the kids get out, they can work between 7:05 and 6:55 any of those days. If they're out for the whole week, they could actually work up to 40 hours a week. And then you've got the 8-hour day and then the 5-hour break time requirement. Next, when it comes to summer, the Department of Labor defines summer as June 1 to Labor Day. And you can see here the availability definitely opens up. Any day of the week between 7:05 and 8:55, you got 2 more hours there. They can work up to 8 hours a day, up to 40 hours a week. Of course, no overtime ever. And you still have the mandatory break, though, at the 5-hour interval. So now let's look at the duties they can and can't perform. We'll go over the permitted duties first, and then the no-no list next. As you can see, these are primarily service-related duties. They can do table service and run food, they can bus, they can clean the tables, they can make coffee in pots, they can make cold beverages, they can actually cashier. They can work in the bakery and can use a regular toaster if there's one in the bakery, and bagel saver, but just like 16 and 17-year-olds, they are not going to be able to use any power-driven equipment. They could do food prep, although that's not on the service side, and they can actually use a knife with a cut-resistant glove, which is our policy anyway, but not sure how you would have someone bounce back and forth like that. As far as running the dish machine, that is acceptable, as well as cleaning with a mop, sweeping, or using a vacuum. Things that they're not permitted to do is anything related to baking. That would even include pan up or placing any kind of raw dough products in a pan, on a tray, etc. They also can't operate any type of oven, and this even includes turbo chef. They can't make espresso drinks. They can make pots of coffee, as I mentioned before, but the likelihood of being burned is greater, apparently, making an individual espresso drink, so that is not permitted. They also can't clean hot surfaces, and as you know, any power-driven equipment. They can go inside a cooler or freezer to retrieve something, put something back, but they actually can't do any significant work inside a cooler or freezer. And they can't climb, whether using a step stool or a ladder. So how are we going to find these individuals? Well, we'll be changing our ad language. We'll include 15 years as the hiring minimum. Our career postings on our career site through Talent Reef, which is also linked to Panera's website, will have that same language, the minimum hiring of 15. And as Melinda does her advertising through Indeed and Facebook Jobs, she'll also include that minimum. The other thing she's going to do for you, that's why I say you've got to love Melinda, is she's going to be the one that will contact the high schools and the VOTECs. And she'll also contact the most popular homeschooling organizations, because we want to be able to get that word out. And I think it would be very beneficial to contact the schools directly and find out the best way for them to be able to get that information out to their students. 15-year-olds will be eligible for employee referrals, and once they're on board, they can actually refer others. And I've updated the poster for that. And to kind of help our employees communicate this message, Melinda created some nice social media images that the employees can post. As far as the recruiting process goes, it's similar with a couple of nuances. The The first thing that changed, I don't know if you've noticed already, is the age question on the application. So when you click on that Posi Fit 1 tab, the first question is to ask them if they're under 18. If they're not, they answer no, well, then they go on to the next question. If they answer yes, then question number 2 pops up to list their age. So they'll list whether they're 15, 16, or 17. And obviously, if they're 15, you're going to know I need to use the 15-year-old interview guide. So the interview guide is essentially the same, except we've kind of expanded the area to talk about their availability. So we want you to spend extra time talking about their personal availability as far as what they can personally work, but also the legal availability and to see how that matches with the schedule. You can also discuss, job duties. Maybe they have in their mind that they're going to work the line, and you might have to say, well, actually, we're going to have you, work in the dining room, or we're going to train you to be a cashier. Also, they have a form, their work certificate. It starts with Form 600. So this is an opportunity to ask them, hey, have you obtained that yet? And then like every other candidate, you'll make that decision, that hiring decision. And if it's no, then you'll release them in Talent Reef. And if it's yes, then you'll plan for that job offer. In making the job offer, you're going to include all the information you normally do. You're going to include a pay rate. You're going to work out what start date works best for both of you, and you'll mark them hired in Talent Reef. As far as the pay rate goes, we're not going to be reducing the pay rate. We're going to have you bring them in at the very minimum of your cafe's hiring range. So if your cafe's hiring range is $10.50, as far as the minimum, then you'll bring them in at $10.50, for example. So the things that do change have to do with the employment certificate. And the state of Oklahoma has 2 forms. They have Form 600 and 601. And here's what they look like. So Form 600 is what they will obtain from their school or parent if homeschooling. Because when it comes to 15-year-olds, the school actually has to approve them to work. They will bring this form to the GM or the AGM to complete and sign our part as the employer. So if you look here, this is Form 600, where I've circled in red, it says to be filled out by the employer. And it basically contains the employer's information and what days a week that they're going to be working. And then you give this back to the student. Again, this has to happen before they start, because they take Form 600, they give it to the school, excuse me, and the school fills out Form 601, which is this form here. So there's nothing for you to do with Form 601 other than accept it. You don't have to complete anything. So just like IDs for the I-9, they actually have to bring Form 601 with them on the first day of school. First day of school, first day of work. I've got school in my mind. The certificate, once you receive it on their first day, is scanned and emailed to me that day, and then you keep the original in their store file. And again, if you happen to be one of those unlucky cafes that get a random audit, that's one of the things that they'll look for, as I mentioned before, is to see each 15-year-old's employment certificate. Then you'll complete the rest of onboarding as normal. And again, here are these certificates. So some clarification on these employment certificates. I just want to make it clear that it's the student's responsibility to obtain these certificates. You do not have the time or the energy to be chasing these down for your new employee. So it's not your responsibility to call the school or call the parent to try to chase down these forms. So your only responsibility is to complete the employer section on that first form and then obtain the certificate when they're hired and they come on board for that first day. So what about their ongoing employment? Well, as far as their training goes, You'll train them on the duties that they're, available and acceptable to do. But your team leads who are training them need to know what those duties are. So just to make sure that you're following within the regulations there. As far as the child labor compliance, the hiring GM or AGM needs to let every manager know who's 15. So if you guys do, I don't know, group texts or group emails or whatever, just to bring each other up to speed on stuff, you need to include, hey, Susie Q is 15. We hired her. She's going to start on Monday. Because every manager at some point is the MIC and could potentially manage her while she's on duty and while you're on duty. So you need to be able to manage those clock in and clock outs. You need to manage that break after 5 hours, and also, make sure that they're doing the duties they need to be doing. As far as other aspects of their employment, raises, evaluations, standards, policies, write-ups, you're going to treat them the same as any other employee. Once they attain the age of 16, the nice thing is those hour and day and weekly restrictions are gone, but you'll still keep Form 601 in their store file. The duty restrictions are also lifted, except of course for the power-driven equipment. So, it's a game changer once they turn 16, and that's the idea. We want to get them at 15 because they're not going to be 15 forever. So they'll be 16 within 12 months, obviously. So we'd like to be able to get them and keep them. So, are you guys ready to hire? Here is what our plan is. As soon as all of your managers in your cafe attend this training, and I'm recording the training in case they can't attend one of the 2 sessions, we want them to get through it as soon as possible. The cafe will be permitted to start with 2 employees who are 15. And the only reason we say 2 is that we want to be able to kind of monitor the activity for a couple of weeks to make sure that the cafe is, in compliance with the time punches. I'm really not worried about the duties per se. It's just that the time punches are a concern for me. We've kind of gone through this before when we had the cafes in Arkansas because their child labor laws are very strict, and we had an audit and it was a nightmare. So, and it was very expensive. So I just want to make sure that, we'll be able to monitor those time punches. And I would also put it on the employee's responsibility and let them know, hey, I'm going to be, as the manager, I'm going to be every place during my shift. So when it's 6:55, you need to come get me and let me know that it's time for you to clock out. And you can kind of put that, on them as well. As far as tools to help you, you're going to get a copy of this PowerPoint. And then there's a manager instruction sheet, which is basically this PowerPoint on one sheet. So you could post it in your office or just have it handy. It has the availability requirements and the duty requirements all on one page. I'll send you the expedited interviewing guide, the employee referral poster, the social media images, and I'll send you the forms 600 and 601 just so you know what they look like. Again, the student employee gets these from their school. So I do not have access to the chat log, so I don't know if any questions popped up, but you're certainly welcome at this point to come off mute and let's talk about anything that's on your mind with regards to these 15-year-olds. No questions? Can I ask, is anybody excited about this? Cautiously optimistic?
There's no questions because Dave and Eric aren't on the call.
Well, I could see, yes, that's very possible. So I have to look out for that on Tuesday, apparently. So what about friction for you guys? Is this going to be a pain, or do you think it'll be worth it? This is really the only way we could think of to help you open up the labor pool. There's only certain things we can impact when it comes to getting people excited about Panera. You guys think it's great?
I don't think I'll have any concerns until we actually hire somebody and then go through that process and the experience.
Well, and when that happens, certainly know that you can reach out to me and talk through things, you know, because this is new for all of us. I've never worked anywhere that's hired 15-year-olds. Of course, I've been here forever, but it's going to be a new venture for all of us, and we'll learn as we go. So yeah, I agree. Once you get that first one on board, you'll probably will have questions at that time. Okay. Any other questions? Well, thanks everybody. I appreciate you all joining. And like I said, I'm certainly available to answer things for you as we get on board. But again, the first thing is, especially the GMs, it's your responsibility to make sure your managers
Hey,
get
Carrie, there's a
this
couple
training.
things in the chat log.
Oh, okay. Well, I don't have access to
Okay.
that.
Lynn asked, did the Arkansas stores have to deal with parents much?
I would say it's no different than a 16-year-old, really. I mean,
Yeah, the Arkansas stores, their child labor laws for 16 and 17-year-olds were as strict as what Oklahoma law is for 15-year-olds. So it really wasn't an age thing as far as being 15 and dealing with parents. It was just the fact that their laws overall were much stricter. The nice thing is that it was our very first audit, and because of that, they gave us a break on the penalty.
Okay. And then Chrissy says that she's excited about opening it up to 15-year-olds, but she's a little nervous at the same time with the rules.
Yeah, and I completely get that. In fact, hey, Craig, there was one question in the last call. I know you had to drop off at the end. And Sean asked, is there any way that when the employee comes in, is there any way to flag that the manager has to clock them in if they're 15? Like use the swipe?
I can check with Julia.
Okay. Because that's another thing. It's not necessarily about them leaving on time, everybody. It's about them, they can't clock in too early either. So 6:59 is just as bad as 6:45 when it comes to an arrival time, like on a Saturday morning. It has to be, you know, that's why we say 7:05 is really the target. Okay, good chat log.
Yeah, I think the big thing here is the summertime is really going to help. I mean, I worked at 14 and 15 at a local cafeteria here. And summertime is great for me. I know it really helped out vacation coverage because we know there's a lot of vacations going on. But I also stayed at that place when I turned 16 until I came to Panera. But in a lot of cases, you're going to have them. You're going to have the early beat on a lot of the high schoolers. So if you can get somebody 15 and keep them through high school, I mean, that's 3 or 4 year employee, you know, assuming they go somewhere else to college. But even if they go through college, now all of a sudden you got somebody for 7 years. So.
Yeah, I mean, we would love to be able to, you know, at least, very least, keep them through high school.
And then you can just trick them into staying for 30 years, like Brian did to me. So.
That's right. Got that big 25 coming up. Okay, everybody. Well, thanks for your time. Again, we're available to help you through this. Just get everybody through training. I'll send out the links to the training for anyone that can attend on Tuesday. And we'll talk to you later.
Hey, Veronica, are you in the cafe?